No more excuses. The Pelicans are 0-2 and competitive doesn't cut it. This team needs wins now, and I'll tell you why in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans at NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Monday, a game day for your New Orleans Pelicans as they take on the Boston Celtics tonight in the Smoothie King Center. But I still want to talk about, we haven't even touched on it yet, the loss to the San Antonio Spurs 120-116 on Friday. The Pelicans actually looked really good, in my opinion, in that game. They looked pretty good against the Memphis Grizzlies too. And guess what? I don't care. You're 0-2. You've got to get wins. And I'll tell you why that's really important, particularly in this season, in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below on YouTube. Don't forget, you can also watch Locked On Pelicans on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network every single weekday at 10:30 a.m. I believe at least on game days, it's also going to air at 6 p.m. to 6:30, leading you into game time, which is pretty cool to see here. So subscribe, watch it on Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, same place you watch your Pelicans play. So let's get into this one, and we're going to kind of look at this through the lens of the Pelicans' loss to the San Antonio Spurs, 120-116 in overtime. By the way, had they won that game in overtime, I would have done a bonus show on Friday night, have it out for y'all on Saturday. I was excited. I wanted to do it. But then they were the Pelicans here. And truthfully, through the first two games, right, you don't want to overreact to an 0-2 start. You don't. They have looked good. They have actually looked pretty good, and you can see this team is competitive. You can see this team's close, and you have good play from the rookies. So you could come in, or I could come in and do the show and be like, big moral victories, right? Like this is close here. But there's no more moral victories with this team. You know, when a moral victory is more or less like when you lose, you kind of show something, you gain something. You know, you played the right way. A rookie showed out. You're, again, being close, right? But this team has kind of been that for years. And at a certain point, it just doesn't matter anymore. You're in year 8 of Zion Williamson. It's not about we're almost there. You need to be over the hump by now or getting over the hump. And do you trust this team to be able to do that? Through these first two games, you have seen just some normal Pelicans things from years past, issues carrying over from previous seasons. And in a year of change with Joe Dumars here running the team now, David Griffin gone, half the roster turned over. They had the least roster continuity out of any NBA team this season. And it's still kind of like same old. And that's not what you want. The San Antonio Spurs, people are kind of hyping them up more than I think they should be. This is not a particularly good team without Victor Wembanyama. And the team did a really good job of limiting and defending Victor Wembanyama. He was, in this game, a -12. That's truthfully like a very good number, right? Like that is phenomenal, fantastic, all of that. Him being a -12 when he's one of the best players in the league. But here's the thing. With Victor Wembanyama off the court, the San Antonio Spurs were a +16. They were better than the Pelicans by 16 points without Wemby. What are we doing here? They went on a 14-0 run without Victor Wembanyama in the fourth quarter. The Pelicans were up 8 at that point in time. Wemby comes out, and it's a 14-0 run. This goes with a 20-0 run or something along those lines in the game 1 against the Memphis Grizzlies without Ja Morant. You have to win those minutes when the best player of your opponent isn't on the court, and the Pelicans aren't doing that. That's not taking advantage. That's kind of shooting yourselves in the foot here. Some of the players on the Spurs that were playing minutes and winning their minutes, look, Luke Kornet is fine. Luke Kornet is not 14 points, 6 of 9 shooting with 9 offensive rebounds good. Dylan Harper is a rookie. Keldon Johnson for years was like, is he better than Zion Williamson? No, he's not. And the Pelicans are getting beat by those guys. That's truthfully just unacceptable, in my opinion here. You need to take advantage of that. And look, I'm not going to go into specific blame here. I know a lot of y'all want to blame the coach. I think everybody's to blame. I'm not going to focus on one area or another. Just because you blame one doesn't mean the other gets less. I'm just going to blame everybody. This is the team's problem. And everyone needs to figure this out. Look, Zion Williamson did an excellent job defending Victor Wembanyama. You want to know if he's in and playing as well as you've ever seen him. It was what he did defensively in this game and how he basically limited Victor Wembanyama down the stretch where they couldn't get him the ball and made him ineffective, one of the most unstoppable players. That dude looks like an alien out there on the court. But then you have Trey making a massive mistake at the end of the game, giving up a Stephon Castle 3. I don't know why he gave him that much space, didn't play up on him, and gave him room to shoot. And I can promise you that's not what the game plan was. That's not what Willie Green was saying to do. That's on the player here, the players, right? And it's a shame because Trey Murphy had a very good game otherwise. 24 points on 9 of 18 shooting with 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals is a very good performance here. And it's wasted. Zion Williamson, 27, 10, 7 assists, 3 steals, was phenomenal. And, gets to the line 16 times. 27 points on 18 shot attempts is great, but they lose in part because Zion couldn't make his free throws. He missed 5, including one that would have put the team up 1 instead of this going to overtime. This is where we get to nitpick little things here because you were so close. But also, don't give up a 14-0 run without Victor Wembanyama out there. Have some pride in the defense, and this team wasn't doing it. This was a winnable game, and it's not a moral victory if the rookies play well. Great. They should play well. You drafted them highly. One's the 7th overall pick, the other, and Derik Queen is the 13th. They should be good. We'll talk more about them in a minute here, right? The defense at times, completely lazy. Just no one's stopping the ball. So yeah, overall, this team has actually looked good, but does it matter because you're 0-2? In a tough Western Conference, when you don't have a first-round pick next year that you could benefit from losing these games from. You know what? Jeremiah Fears and Derik Queen look like the future of the team. Great. They should. You drafted them 7th and 13th. You don't need to see it in a loss to kind of feel good about that. I could have told you these guys were going to be good. Again, we'll talk more about them next, right? That's what's so disappointing about this is, the fourth quarter and giving up that run, like you could see that kind of coming from this team, and it shouldn't. The overtime, was a little bit less so. They just weren't executing. And I think that's kind of part of a problem here. A lot of these things can get figured out. The Pelicans finishing at the rim is terrible right now. They're the 3rd worst shooting team at the rim at 55.4%. That's going to doom this team. Zion Williamson is not shooting particularly well at the rim at 54%. Neither is Trey at 56%. Jordan Poole is 44%. These are the guys that you need doing more. In a game where everyone is kind of committed, at least in half-court defense, it was really transition defense that was killing New Orleans. Herb Jones doesn't score, or at least didn't score for the most part. He went 0 for 8. That's horrible. You can't have these type of performances in a big-time season for you. That's what's so frustrating about an 0-2 start when normally, no, it's early. You got 80 more games. But every game is going to matter. And these were 2 winnable games that New Orleans has they've lost it themselves. It's not the opponent doing as much. It's not like Luke Cornett played out of his mind. It's just the Pelicans made it easy on him. And they need to figure this stuff out. And the problem that makes this 0-2 feel worse is, do you actually trust the team to figure it out? And I'm not meaning one area. The coaches to coach them out over to the players to play better. Everybody. We've been here before. We've seen this team. There's new players on it, yeah, but we've seen this group, and a lot of the core guys are still here. I want to expand more on this probably on the Wednesday show. We're going to recap the game on Tuesday's show tomorrow, but I want to focus more about this on Wednesday, the day they play the Nuggets, because I think this is kind of important. There's a clock ticking here, but maybe not the clock that you're thinking. We'll get into that more on Wednesday's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Coming up next, Derik Queen played well. Let's just be happy about that. We'll talk about him. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Monarch. Let's be honest, most of us can't name all of our financial accounts, let alone what those accounts are worth. So between 401ks, savings, investments, it's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. So that's why I started using Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. It helps me organize my accounts, track my spending, and just get a better handle on everything without having to touch a spreadsheet, which I don't want to do. You can link your accounts in seconds. My fiance and I, we've linked our accounts. We can review everything together. We stay on track for our shared financial goals. It makes everything just easier, I think. Less fights, too. And Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools make it so much easier to understand where your money's going and how to make it work harder for you. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is also brought to you by Game Time. This is my go-to ticketing app because basketball is officially here and nothing beats being in the arena, especially for these opening games when there's still hope for this team. But getting tickets can be a headache. And yeah, friends of mine, I can't get you tickets. I send everybody to Game Time. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is just cheer on the Pelicans here. So that's where Game Time comes in. It's the app that gives fans the advantage, your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. A bunch of people wanted to go to the home opener. Like, Jay, can you get tickets? I wish. I just tell them to go to Game Time. They had seats in minutes with a great view, a really good price. There's zone deals for Game Time or a game changer. You pick the section and Game Time picks your seats and you save big. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go with Game Time. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. Means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. If you're not an everydayer, it's totally okay. I appreciate you making Locked On Pelicans part of your day, whenever and however you listen. Also, shout out to everyone who said hi at the Smoothie King Center on Friday for the home opener. I always love meeting everyone as I'm walking around the arena, going from one place to another. So if you see me, stop me and say hi. I'm happy to chat with y'all for a little bit about where this Pelicans team is headed. I also want to hear what y'all have to say. I'm always asking y'all questions, what you think is going to happen here too. For your second listen, it's Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Make sure you win your league. Draft season might be over, but Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 fantasy basketball podcast, giving you daily tips and helping you win your league while making you a smarter NBA fan. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Derik Queen played very, very well, I thought, in this game against the San Antonio Spurs. Almost 35 minutes of action when, he's had barely time to truly practice with this team. But I thought he looked particularly impressive. And look, this shouldn't be a surprise. He was a slightly polarizing guy coming into the NBA. But if you liked him, you really liked him. If you didn't, you were just like, he should be in the 20s, and not a lottery pick. But if you liked him, you saw a very unique and special big man, and you even saw it in this game. I thought he played very well. 6 of 11 shooting, 15 points on the night, 6 rebounds, 2 blocks, ended up fouling out, but he's a rookie. Got to the line, just did kind of everything you want. But I want to focus on kind of a couple areas with him, right? The box score stats are great. But when you watch him out there, the feel for the game that he has is truly impressive. He has some very high basketball IQ. He does have at times this kind of nonchalant, doesn't look like he cares attitude about him. But usually when he's on the court, this guy's ready to go. And you could really see the basketball IQ on display. They were running some pretty creative offensive concepts with him. It's going to kind of get lost in this because of the loss. And I might do a play breakdown, just a short little one on YouTube. But, especially his opening bucket, it's actually a pretty smart double pick and roll type play that he was involved in, that a rookie getting some of his first real NBA minutes with Victor Wembanyama on the court, should look lost and should not look good, except he looked really good. So when you see the basketball IQ of just knowing where to be, I thought that was really impressive. That's going to help him fit in alongside Zion Williamson. And in fact, for all the questions about does Derik Queen fit alongside Zion, and there's valid questions about that. In this game against the San Antonio Spurs, the Pelicans' most effective lineup, both offensively and defensively, had Zion out there with Derik Queen. They started a small ball lineup, which I thought was smart, with Misi being out, Saddiq Bey sliding in, kind of Bey being your center, Zion being your center. Thought that was smart to do. Trey at times kind of being the center too. But Derik Queen really did add some needed rebounding to this squad when he was out there on the court, because that was something that kind of killed New Orleans in this game. An area we knew they were going to struggle in, but the San Antonio Spurs had 26 second chance points. They had, I think, 20 offensive rebounds in this game. Yeah. It's kind of like yikes inducing, in my opinion here. But Derik Queen, who is a very good defensive rebounder, did well on opening night. Didn't do as good of a job in this one, but this was always going to be an uphill battle for New Orleans with a severe size disadvantage here. Can really help with a lot of that. So I thought Derik Queen did a very good enough job, right? He's kind of getting graded on a curve here. Defensively, that basketball IQ was also on display. He knew where to be. You saw his defensive rotations be pretty spot on. He knew when to help off of the weak side, when to rotate over to try and contest the ball. You saw him get a couple of blocks on this too. It was just a really impressive overall game from a guy that probably shouldn't be playing 35 minutes, even in overtime, in his second NBA game. You don't even need to squint to see the vision with Derik Queen. He is a skilled and talented offensive big man that can work in the pick and roll, can work as a spot up shooter, has a variety of ways to score, and eventually can be an offensive hub type of player. He looks good. He looked very, very good. He's not an elite athlete, but for the skill set that he brings, he doesn't need to be, I think. And he's going to have a very long career ahead of him. And this was just kind of a flash of that. Yeah, I thought he did really, really well in this game. If Misi's going to be injured or out more, like, you could make an argument that maybe Derik Queen should start instead of them going small ball. We'll see. I'm going to be curious what ends up happening with this team. And maybe it makes the center position, while still weak for New Orleans, look a little bit better here now that you know that he's a viable option there. Well, we're going to be obviously watching him very closely as the season goes on, but you had to like what you saw from Derik Queen. Just very impressive. Essentially, this being his NBA debut to kind of get a jump up in. It shows that the coaching staff trusts him a lot. He even said so after the game. Having that trust and faith in him can really do wonders for his development. They need to keep playing him. Same thing for Jeremiah Fears. They need to play him. They had him closing, which I think speaks a lot too. He was good in this game as well. 13 points on 5 of 8 shooting here, 4 rebounds, 2 steals, just 2 turnovers, 1 assist. Again, he kind of does what he does, and you know that from him. One of the more impressive things, I said the Pelicans are 3rd worst at finishing at the rim, and that kills them. That kills your transition defense. You miss a layup, that player who missed the layup is out of the play and can't get back on defense, and you're giving the opponent a fast break opportunity. I'm going to keep hammering this. I told you this was going to be a problem potentially going into the season. Look at that through the first 2 games of the season here. Jeremiah Fears, by the way, is shooting 66.7% from the field. Or sorry, not from the field, at the rim. He's making 2/3 of his shots at the rim. That's a good number for the rookie. And he's slightly undersized. You'd like that to be closer to like 72 or something along those lines. But I'll take this. He's basically scoring at the rim. He's doing what you want him to do, or getting into the paint and just using that little mid-range turnaround fadeaway pull-up jumper that he has, which is also really impressive. He's shown a lot. By the way, speaking of like jumpers, Zion tied the game with a midi. He's struggling to finish at the rim because, again, it's a lot of contact that he needs to fight through. There are reasons for it here. Basically teams are like daring the refs to call fouls and send Zion to the line. Look, he went to the line 16 times. They'll call it. That's a good sign. But he does need that little mid-range jumper to keep teams honest slightly. And the fact that he hit one to send the game to overtime, I thought was particularly impressive, to break it out in like a very clutch situation. Like that was his one non-restricted area shot that he made. That's kind of a high pressure spot to break that out. I like that from him. So that was good to see. That'll, I think, open things up a little bit more and allow him, when teams start to step out on him more, to go to the rim some more. So that should help things. That was impressive to see too. But you really had to like what you saw from the rookies. Jeremiah Fears continues to impress. Derik Queen really impressed in that one. They should also have a pretty big game against the Boston Celtics, both those guys tonight, along with Zion Williamson too. Sounds like Jaylen Brown might not be playing. If that's the case, that's really going to help New Orleans potentially get a win, their first win of the season at home in the Smoothie King Center. So coming up next, I'm going to look at a couple of other areas from this game. Jordan Poole, Trey Murphy. I want to get into the defense a little bit too. All of that and more in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans here. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Maybe don't bet on that for the New Orleans Pelicans. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout, and it basically just keeps every game more exciting, especially if the Pelicans are kind of making a late push here. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. It's maybe the best offer I've heard, and FanDuel has been with Locked On for a really long time. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. You will get $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins over at FanDuel.com. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen. Today and every day, we are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 12,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Don't forget, you can watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Same place you watch your Pelicans play. For home games, at the very least, I believe the show is going to be on Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network leading up to the game from 6 to 6:30, which is really cool to see as well. You got 6 to 6:30, Locked On Pelicans, then Pelicans Live, the pregame show, then the game. So just, throw on Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network super early and just kind of watch it all day long. You'll get a lot of Locked On Pelicans content there. For your second listen, it's Locked On Saints with Ross Jackson. I'm recording this before the Saints kick off against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is literally in minutes, so I want to end this soon. But Ross Jackson's going to have the recap from that game. Are they able to get the win, or does Baker Mayfield just hate New Orleans too much or the Saints too much, and he's going to really stick it to the black and gold? Get everything you want about the black and gold over at the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's continue to talk about the Pelicans losing to the San Antonio Spurs here, 120-116 in overtime. Again, the team is close. And you can see, it's hazy, but you can see the makings of a good team. You can see the makings of a good competitive team, but that doesn't matter. I did a little 1-minute recap after the game. You can be competitive in every game and still go 0-82, and you might have a point differential of 100 or something, but you still lost. So being competitive, being close to a good team, doesn't matter at the end of this. It's a results-oriented business. Process is important for the first couple of years, but we're beyond that, right? This is year 7, year 8 of Zion Williamson. It needs to be more at this point in time. Just simple as that. Has to be more. And the team has not put it all together. A lot of that's going to be on coaching, right? You've got to figure out how to not let up 14-0 runs when Victor Wembanyama is out of the game, a 20-0 run when Ja Morant isn't out there. I'm not going to get into whether Willie Green should be fired or not. It's beyond all of that, right? Because there's the players' faults too, and a new head coach won't necessarily change anything. It might be worth figuring that out. That's a variable you can start to kind of diagnose a little bit, but ultimately it might not end up mattering either. It could still be the players. I guarantee you Trey was not supposed to sag off Stephon Castle that much and just made a mistake, and that's on the player, right? If Zion finishes his layups a little bit better, we're talking entirely different here. And there's not a ton that Willie Green's going to be able to do to make Zion finish better through contact. The teams are going to defend Zion the way he defends them. And the idea would be put more shooting around him to space the court, but that doesn't matter. And do you actually want Jordan Hawkins getting significantly more minutes? The answer is probably no. Right? There are some limitations there when it comes to all of this. That's a Joe Dumars issue too. Did they add enough shooting when it comes down to this? So I'm blaming everybody here. They all need to get together and figure out what the heck to do about this start that shows some promise, but that doesn't matter. get wins. Everyone's waiting for it. And I'll expand more on this on Wednesday because I do think there is a bit of a clock ticking on this version of the New Orleans Pelicans that ends at the end of this year. Maybe even ends at the trade deadline. We'll talk more about that on Wednesday's show. Tomorrow will be the recap after the Boston Celtics game. I'm really looking forward to kind of analyzing that here. So one of the things that they do need to figure out is getting like Jordan Poole and Trey Murphy a little bit more on the same page. I thought Trey did a good job, 24 points in this game here. Jordan Poole, 21 on 8 of 20 shooting. It's not bad, 5 assists, but he did not look great running the pick and roll, orchestrating the offense. You kind of need him just creating his own shot. They need to get those two guys on the same page. You see both of them work well with Zion Williamson, but you need to get both those guys working well together. That is some of the coaching staff and getting these two players kind of on the same page because the non-Zion minutes have not been particularly great. In my opinion, the offense does tend to fall apart. That's not ideal. With Zion on the court, they were a +6. With Zion off, which included Trey and Poole on the court at the same time for a lot of those minutes, they were a -10. That's not going to get it done. You need to, you brought in Poole, you brought in Trey to kind of help when Zion was off the court because you have creation from those guys. They're not getting that kind of creation from those guys. And that's what you need to see from this team. So that's going to be a really important thing that they need to figure out. I'll analyze this a little bit more on Wednesday as well, where I can dive into some of the numbers and I can share some of the stats with you because that's something they need to figure out. You really should be able to beat up on some opponents' benches with Poole and Trey out there when Zion's out. And the Pelicans haven't taken advantage of that either. Let's see if they make some adjustments, what changes we have in tonight's game against the Boston Celtics. I'm hopeful the Pelicans can get a win. Let me know if you think they'll get one in the comments down below. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. I'm excited for this week of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. See y'all tomorrow.